Imagine this, in the middle of the night, deep inside a quiet American airbase, something unusual begins to happen. Hangar doors slowly slide open. Massive aircraft, almost invisible in the dark, are rolled onto the runway, one by one. These are not ordinary planes. They are B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, some of the most advanced war machines ever built. And tonight, they are preparing for a mission that could change the balance of power in the Middle East. Hours earlier, tensions had exploded after Iran launched a wave of ballistic missiles toward neighboring regions. Intelligence satellites quickly traced the launches back to heavily fortified missile bunkers hidden deep underground. Within minutes, the decision was made. Those bunkers had to be destroyed, and only one aircraft in the world could reach them without being detected: the B-2 Spirit. Back on the airfield, ground crews were already racing against time. Floodlights illuminated the tarmac as technicians rushed between the aircraft carrying tools, cables, and fueling equipment. The B-2 is enormous. Its massive flying wing design stretches over 170 feet wide, and preparing it for combat is a complex operation. Fuel trucks rolled into position beside each bomber. Thick hoses were connected to fueling ports as thousands of pounds of aviation fuel began flowing into the aircraft's tanks. Each B-2 requires roughly 167,000 pounds of fuel just to begin the mission. But even that isn't enough. The targets lie thousands of miles away, meaning the bombers will rely on multiple mid-air refueling operations before reaching their destination. As the night continued, crews worked non-stop. Portable pumping stations were dragged across the runway from one bomber to the next. Heavy hoses were disconnected, sealed, and reattached again and again. Gauges were constantly monitored to ensure the tanks were filled to exact levels. Every second mattered. Meanwhile, inside the operations building, the pilots were preparing in their own way. Unlike the rushed activity outside, the atmosphere here was calm. B-2 pilots know that missions like this demand patience and focus. They reviewed flight paths, studied satellite maps, and checked mission details carefully. The journey ahead would take many hours, flying across oceans, coordinating with tanker aircraft, and navigating some of the most heavily defended airspace in the world. Eventually, dawn began to break over the airfield. The pilots suited up. Flight suits were secured. Helmets were locked into place. Oxygen masks and survival gear were checked one final time. Outside, fighter jets were also preparing for takeoff. A formation of F-35 Lightning II fighters would escort the stealth bombers for parts of the journey, protecting them as they crossed international airspace. Other aircraft would rotate in and out during the mission as fuel levels changed. One by one, the pilots climbed into their cockpits. Engines roared to life. The first fighter jet taxied slowly toward the runway, followed closely by another. Soon, the massive B-2 bombers began rolling forward as well, their dark wings stretching across the runway like silent shadows. For a moment, everything paused. Then the first bomber pushed its engines to full power. The aircraft surged forward, gaining speed before lifting smoothly into the early morning sky. Within minutes, the rest of the formation followed. High above the clouds, the aircraft assembled into formation. The B-2 bombers flew at the center, while escort fighters took positions along the sides. The mission had officially begun. Hours later, the bombers approached their first aerial refueling point. A massive tanker aircraft was already waiting in the sky. One by one, the B-2s moved into position behind it. A long fueling boom slowly extended downward and connected with the bomber's fuel receptacle. Fuel began flowing through the line. For several minutes, the aircraft remained perfectly steady, thousands of feet above the ocean, as tens of thousands of pounds of fuel were transferred. Once complete, the boom disconnected and the bomber gently pulled away to continue the journey. But far from the skies, another operation was unfolding on the ground. At a desert military base in the Middle East, helicopters lined the runway while ground crews worked rapidly to refuel them. Transport helicopters, attack helicopters, and support aircraft were all preparing for deployment near the border regions. Nearby, groups of soldiers formed organized columns as they waited to board. Each soldier carried full combat gear, rifles, body armor, ammunition, and heavy packs filled with essential equipment. The helicopter ramps lowered, troops climbed inside, while additional cargo was loaded alongside them. Crates of supplies, spare parts, medical equipment, and communication systems. Within minutes, the first helicopter lifted off, then another and another. The aircraft carried the soldiers toward a remote desert location where a new forward operating base would be established. When they landed, the troops immediately went to work. Tents were erected, defensive positions were dug into the sand, communication systems were assembled, and a security perimeter was formed. In just a few hours, an empty stretch of desert transformed into a fully operational military base. And while the soldiers prepared on the ground, high above them, the stealth bombers continued their silent journey toward their targets. A mission that had begun in darkness was now moving steadily toward its final objective.